Awesome. Well, welcome again, everybody. This is week 6. That means we've been quarantined for a long time, but week 6, and there is a resounding theme to what I am hearing from everybody right now, and that is that everybody's backs are hurting. And it's from a number of different reasons. And so I want to really just dial in and focus on, you know, a couple things that you can do to assess yourself. And these are just simple recommendations, nothing crazy, not a major diagnosis or anything, but I want to give the 5 top reasons that I see back pain, and then 5 simple things that you can do that corresponds to each one of those. So, got my little notes here. So the first one that I want to talk about is asymmetry. So asymmetry means that one side doesn't look like the other. Now, we have one spine. So one spine of the, so I get it that there's going to be some differences there, you know, like you just have one. It's not like what my right hand looks like my left hand. It's a little bit different in that what your spine is doing can shift you one side or the other. And so what that will do is distribute the weight differently, not only through your lower part of the spine, but also will relate upwards of the spine. So let me give you an example. So if I am standing here, and so if I am super symmetrical, if I lean to the side a little bit, which I see a lot, people think that they're standing totally straight. So obviously that is asymmetrical. I'm leaning over a little bit and I'm literally just shifting one side or the other. And I see people do this a lot. And right now, people are sitting a lot and they're leaning into their couches. They're leaning into their different home setup in their office. We're just sitting a whole lot more. So I really encourage people to do their own little self-assessment, meaning have somebody either take a picture of you just simply standing as comfortable as possible without thinking about it too much. And then when you look at yourself, I want you to look at the distance between your hands and the distance here from your hand to your leg. So more often than not, I see that if you look close, and you could even have somebody just take a picture of like your pelvis and your hands, you're going to see a difference. One side is a little bit smaller than the other. And so I'm going to give you a quick little corrective for that. So our point number 1 is the 5 reasons for back pain. Number 1 is asymmetry. And so I gave you a little way to look at that. Now I'm going to give you a quick little way to help correct that. So if you see yourself standing, and granted, this is just like one possible reason and one little exercise, like it's not a diagnosis, it's not saying that this is what everybody has, but I'm seeing this a lot, even just in these Zoom calls. So I'm going to give you the exercise for it. So if you are standing, and I am shifted over this way, so and grant, this is a huge exaggeration. I'm shifted over this way, and there's more space here. I want to literally push my pelvis back underneath me, okay? But that's not the exercise. You're going to do it against a wall. So if that was my direction, so if I have a space on my left, meaning there's a greater amount of space from my hand to my leg on my left, I'm going to put that into a wall. So I'm standing about a foot to a foot and a half away from the wall and leaning into the wall. Okay, I'm going to bring it up a little bit. So I'm going to put my hand I'm going to bend my elbow that's against the wall. I'm going to put my hand on my hip. I'm going to literally glide my pelvis into the wall. So I like this about 20 times. I'm not pushing real hard. It's just like a an encouraged suggestion. I'm pushing into that. So that's like, and usually it's a little sore. If this causes super intense pain, don't do it. This is like these little things. I would rather nip these little things in the butt before they create big, big problems. So have somebody take a picture of you and do your own little evaluation and try those slides. You don't have to do it at this very second. But that was number one, is asymmetry. Number two is leg crossing. This one's rough because a lot of people are not, like, they'll have their nice comfortable setups at work, but they're not at work anymore. And they're sitting in their chairs and they're sitting, you know, and there's one leg is off to the side, you know, you're not sitting symmetrical. Crossing your legs puts a huge torque at the pelvis. Let me show you. So if this is the pelvis, and this is, I think last time I had a boy pelvis, this is a girl pelvis. So if you are crossing your legs, you're tilting your pelvis like this. So if I'm crossing my right leg over my left, more often than not, this is then how I'm bearing weight. So instead of bearing weight here, I am now bearing weight here. And that obviously tips the pelvis and creates a curvature in the spine. And I'll sometimes see that offset position with a leg, with somebody that has been crossing their legs. So that is one of the things I want people to avoid. People can cross your ankles. Like if you're sitting at a chair, you can cross your ankles, but crossing like your knees over it just wreaks havoc on the system. And that goes the same type of thing is if you are a take the hip type of person, meaning you stand like this. This to me is the equivalent of leg crossing. So I don't want leg crossing and I don't want hip taking. And I see that all the time. It's like nails on the chalkboard for me. So I'm going to give a little bit of a correction for that. So when that hip range of motion is off, if we go deeper into the hip, there's a hip capsule. And the hip capsule is not something that we talk about very often, but that is where when people chronically, particularly those that cross the same leg over the other, one hip will get really tight in the front. And that contributes significantly to back pain. So I'm going to talk about a little hip capsule stretch. And this will be fun because I'm going to go to the floor. And everybody see me? Okay, so from here, so I'm on my hands and my knees are straight underneath my hips, and my arms, my hands are straight underneath my shoulders. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shift my weight over to one side. I'm asking you to cross your knees. It's ironic. Okay, you're going to cross one knee behind the other one. And then you're going to lean into that hip a little bit. I'm going to show you this way. And you're going to lean. So I'm leaning into this hip. You're going to feel a nice stretch in the hip, but you also might feel it in the joint capsule. Now this is more of a posterior hip capsule stretch. I'll show you an anterior hip capsule stretch. But you might feel a pretty intense burn. I'm going to go to the other side. Cross the one knee behind. So I had some SI joint pain last night, and it's because my right hip was really tight. And so I stretched it out and now I don't have it. And I know that sounds real simple, but this is exactly what I did. So if you happen to be doing this, give me a thumbs up if you feel it. If you're not, that's totally cool. I fully trust you'll try it later. So that is a hip capsule stretch for the back. Check my time. Okay. So now I'm going to show you a hip capsule stretch for the front. And this one's a little tricky. Round, flat, Zoop. Okay, I'm going to lay flat. I'm going to bend one knee and put my foot under the shin of my opposite leg.
We've lost your volume or your vocals.
Really?
There. Well, now I hear you.
Now you hear me? Okay, good. Everybody hear me? Okay. So, can you see my legs? Yeah, perfect. So I'm going to bend one leg and put it under the shin of the other. And the goal is to keep this hip towards the ground. Does that make sense? I'll do it again. I'll do it on the other leg. So if I'm going to stretch out this right hip, I'm going to bend my right knee. I'm going to let that foot fall towards the shin of the other one. I'm going to use the shin of my left leg to push down towards the floor. And that will give a nice hip capsule stretch to the front of that hip. You might feel it in the outside, and that's totally cool too. So we've addressed some asymmetry. We've talked about there's some leg crossing. And then this goes into some tight hips. And that is, the tight hips alone is my third reason for back pain. And tightness of the hips, and I'll delve into it. So the body is organized and around, I'm gonna dive a little deeper here. I think everybody here can handle it. So the body is phenomenally organized into alternating joints of stable, mobile, stable, mobile. Your ankles should be mobile. Your knees should be stable. Your hips should be mobile. Your low back should be stable. Your thoracic spine should be mobile, and so on and so forth, all the way out. When we mess with that organization, the wheels fall off the wagon. And if you have tight hips, then which should be a mobile joint, if a mobile joint becomes a stable joint, it throws off that whole organization. So if you have tight hips, your low back, which should be a stable joint, suddenly has to become a mobile joint because it's the nearest location. And if that low back becomes the mobile joint, then we get some instability of the spine, and that doesn't feel good for anybody. Okay, so again, it's a super complicated, relatively simple principle all at the same time. Alternating joints, mobile, stable, mobile, stable, mobile, stable. When we when that organization becomes chaotic and one of those joints flips from a stable joint to a mobile joint, it becomes painful because that's not how it's supposed to function. Does that make sense? It's a cool principle, and that applies to every part, like how the whole system functions, which is really, really cool. So one of the things that I often will tell people that have low back pain is stretch out your mid back and stretch out your hips. So we're going above and below the whole system. You're going above and below so that we allow for the spine to be stable because we've reintroduced motion in the thoracic spine and the hips. So hip stretches, we just did 2 of them, and there's like a gazillion out there. My favorite is the piriformis stretch. It's like goes down in the books as my favorite. I'll show it to you guys real quick. I might have to make this 2 sections because, we'll see. All right, so back to the floor here. So if you're laying on the floor and you cross one leg over the other, you're going to grab that ankle that's resting on that knee, and you're going to bring it down towards your hip. Then you're going to grab the back of that knee and bring it towards you. It's a really weird angle. And you should feel a pull somewhere in your bum. This one is such a good stretch. And of course, to get that true physiological lengthening of tissue, you need to hold it for at least a minute. And that should be a resounding time frame throughout all of this. If you want a true physiological lengthening of the tissue, you need to hold it for at least 60 seconds. You get a little bit of a stretch at 30, but it's not causing a physiological change. You need that at least 30 seconds. Sorry, at least 60 seconds. Let me see here. I think I'm gonna hold the rest of that's a lot of information to digest. I think I'm gonna stop here, and the next two, so that's really just 3, asymmetry, the leg crossing, and the tight hips. Some of those kind of go along. The last 2, I'll just tell you, is poor posture, just in the thoracic spine, and I kind of dabbled in that. That's gonna be next. And then tightness in the psoas. Those will be the next 2 for next week. Because I want to answer any questions if anybody has them. So I'll just say unmute if you have a question. Yeah, Meadow, go ahead.
I just had kind of a comment too about the hip out when you were doing that. I was just thinking of not necessarily only women, but people carrying babies a lot in that position. And it's like, or whichever side. And I when you did that, I was like, oh, I was just imagining like a pretend baby on your hip. I'm like, oh yeah, that's the like carrying the baby around kind of.
Yeah, no, it's so in the medical world, the medical world meets to decide on diagnosis, the names of diagnoses. And so we're developing this whole new thing. Like there used to be trigger finger. People have heard of, trigger finger before. And then gamekeeper's thumb is another one. But now there's like phone elbow, like calling it phone elbow and phone thumb from holding your holding your phone and moving your thumb around. And I honestly think there should be a baby holding diagnosis, because I see it all the time. Like I can see it I held all my babies right here. They were always like right in my front, because I can't hold a child there for 30 seconds without my whole body like revolting. So yeah, I am 100% in agreement. Yeah, this is exactly, you can tell all those poor women that you see holding their babies on one side, like you're gonna have to glide your pelvis back underneath you. Yeah. Anyone else?
I also thought it was interesting when you were talking about the stable versus mobile parts, and I remember you talking about that in Corey too, in different like seminars that we've interacted in about like, there's a stable and a mobile, and then if one is mobile, the other one has to stabilize. And I don't totally, I understand it. I don't, but that's something interesting I would kind of like to hear more about maybe in the future.
Yeah.
Just kind of interesting.
Yeah, I can delve into what does it mean to be mobile and what does it mean to be stable. So I'll just do that real quick. So if we think about seated shoulder is the best one because there's mobile, but it compromises a lot of stability for it to get the mobility, right? So it's designed in a certain way to allow for that. So if we suddenly tighten up that shoulder, what's going to happen is you're going to ask for a whole lot more range of motion from your elbow, doing stuff, and your neck jacked. It is going to be completely jacked up, because then you're going to have to you're going to be wrenching in weird positions. So it's that organization of the elbow. The elbow is designed, it has like 2 movements. It is hunkered down by, it's like one of the, it's like there's not a lot of movement there as far as what the joint is capable of. Like this is it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like it's going 180 degrees like the shoulder is. So if we then push the limits of what we're asking of that elbow, it's gonna hurt. It's just not designed that way. So yeah, just to speak to that a little bit more. So yeah, no, it's a phenomenal principle, and one that we were taught many, many times over and over and over in school, and continue to do that to this day. So that's a good one. Cool. Well, awesome, guys. I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time. Thank you again for checking in. It's always a pleasure to see faces, and I know I have a consistent group of people that that check after. So it's good to be in connection with people during this time. So thanks for checking in, guys. And we'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye, guys.